For the first video on this Virkayu All Roles channel, I figured we should look at the best champions to main for the whole season for every single role. Champions that get better with games played, won't be hard nerfed and be useless like Volibear, and will cover different playstyles within the role. What we're looking for is high skill expression, pretty OP when you learn them properly and invest that time. They have high impact for solo carry potential, or at least high win condition control. They're good through any single meta you could ever face. And while they shouldn't be super popular, they can actually have a decent popularity as long as the ban rate isn't too high. And I think you understand the parameters, so let's jump into the top lane. First and foremost, we're going to go with Riven. She has those satisfying combos, those animation cancels. She challenges your skill as a laner and as a mechanical player. And the learning curve, when you combine that with good old-fashioned high-level macro that top laners should know, essentially she is one of those things that you think, why isn't she played more? Why don't more people play Riven? That's because she also has a supremely high skill floor. You hear about low skill floor, high skill ceiling champions and you think that's amazing for this list. Yes, but at the same time, we want to have some high skill cap pigs, and the solo potential for carrying games is always immense on Riven. If you see a good Riven, you know it. If you see a not good Riven, you also unfortunately know it. While some people always talk about matchups and top lane, as long as you've got something you truly know counters you or something you truly hate, you can ban that sucker away, and essentially, a lot of the champions on this list will have an element of skill issue, thereby saying you need to get better at your champion and everything you do is learning. You are investing in learning Riven. She's mobile, she's flashy, she's pleasing to play, she can sustain, she can stun, she can engage, she's highly mobile, she's the original you can't catch her champion. All of the amazing stuff you can do. The map control she seems to have: winning lane, solo killing, getting plates, moving for grubs, invading red buffs, going mid lane for a gank, going back to the bottom lane to impact that somehow as well. She's on the dragon, and then she's flash engaging with a mega stun, or using that proc of her ultimate to get you as she fades in the other direction with the Iron Man flare. Truly one of the best champions to main in top lane and in the whole game League of Legends. Secondly, we're going to go with Kled because he has awkward mechanics, but once you get them narrowed down, once you understand how to use Skull properly, it really gets fun to use them all. He has that pseudo semi-global ultimate that allows you to engage and roam from top to bot to mid. Wherever you need to be macro-wise, you can get there. Riven has to walk over, although with high mobility, you get to trot over and run. Not only that, because no one knows how to play against him, no one understands how to navigate that mount system, you have that advantage, right? No one sees a good enough Kled. When you have that lead, he's very, very difficult to play against. He's a hyper snowballing champion. And when you have so much skill in terms of understanding not only the mounted form, but the dismounted form and how to stack that up as quick as possible, but you understand macro along with winning lanes, this is truly basically going to be the theme of how you play top lane. And what he has that a lot of fighters don't have is the ability to stick to target until they're dead. Now obviously this is not going to be as interesting as Kled and Riven, but Ornn is the purest of pure top lane tanks. It does not get better than Ornn in terms of design. Now you're going to mention Cassante, but I'll talk about him in a second. Ornn has this really powerful damage that people don't really track properly. They also don't really track the pillar on the Q, so that EQ combo is really coming in nicely with a nice auto attack Brita proc. And if he's using the R combo, you're going to get triple knockup and you're basically guaranteed dead. And that's the other thing. Not only does he have decent damage for a tank, he also has copious amounts of CC and knockups, which cannot be affected by tenacity. So while his R1 was nerfed many years back because of pro play, as long as you've got something that can guarantee that hit, or it's a good Ornn and it doesn't need it and he hits R2 anyway, someone is getting pumped. Right into the air, right into the atmosphere, and they're being killed. It's the ultimate zoning tool, it's the ultimate engage tool, it's the ultimate thing to rotate to around objectives. While there will be best items and worst items, overall he can itemize in really any way he likes. The most important thing is that while the Riven and the Kled will win those lanes guaranteed and then roam around the map and, spread terror, Ornn might not have the exact same potential to do that in a lane that he's maybe losing, or maybe your laning isn't that good just yet. This channel will hopefully help. But his Ornn item upgrades for everybody on his team basically gives the team a free 5k gold lead as soon as he passes that level 13 mark. Infinitely scaling, scales with those upgrades as well, huge itemization, really strong in lane, which means you can win lane as well, and is the peak, engage, and peel, and disrupt and zoning champion. And as everyone knows from my jungle channel, I played him in the jungle. So yeah, no bias, I guess. Next, we are going to talk about, yes, Cassante, because I mentioned the best tank, and now people are like, yes, but Cassante is the best tank. Cassante ain't no tank. Cassante is a 3,000 year tank fighter thing. He basically becomes Aurelia when he's, ulted somebody. He's Ornn, but you also want to be the solo carry champion on your team. He has a weaker laning phase, however, and does scale and really hit like a big old-fashioned rock. But because his damage is based on those resistances, when he's not in that ultimate all-out form, he truly is almost unkillable. He has those consistent damage, that consistent slow, the consistent CC, the wall dash when he's in all-out form. He can shield teammates with that E as well. He can take you to the other side of Narnia, through a wall, and all kinds of cosmos things that you see within that when he ults you. Basically, the unstoppable with his damage reduction W as well. It's a total kit of solo queue domination, which is why you're always going to see him in pro play until they otherwise change him a little bit more. The good news is he's actually not that picked and not that banned in solo queue, and his win rate isn't that great, so people kind of forget about it until you're doing the illegal things to them. So, go forth, main it, enjoy it. And finally, we have Irelia. For this one, we had to bring her up because I mentioned Cassandra becomes kind of her when he ults. She is the original, the prototype. You'd think that she's banned more, picked more, but she really isn't. You know, you go with things like Fiora, you go with things like Camille. They go through periods where they're so strong that they're banned a lot. A lot of people, I know, high elo top laners have never seen a Fiora in about 4 years because they just refuse to face it. You're not going to get the same thing with Irelia, who goes through these understated weaker phases. She is a little bit weaker in lane and she can lose lane, but good Aurelias tend to understand how to use her Q stacking properly, they understand how to use that damage reduction W properly, and their E's are just beautiful and flawless, and the way they slice and dice with auto attacks and Qs throughout the fight. She's basically a ranged champion, and then she's got the ultimate which just slices you with 1,000 knives, and I'm going on a little bit. I wish I could jungle her, she's just that great a champion. High skill floor, high skill ceiling, really fun to learn, really fun to master, and you buy Blade of the Ruined King and it's over. And while you might think, isn't she susceptible to the meta? Not really, you know? It really hasn't been that way. Her ban rate and pick rate aren't so high that you're gonna have to worry about that. You can honestly pick her most games, almost every game you play. And as long as you understand your own personal matchups and which itemization to abuse on her, you know, we had the Jack Show tech for a while, basically, you're gonna be golden. So, go ahead, make people go golden with Zhonya's, because it's the only way they have to survive you. Right, let's jump on over to the regular Virkayu audience's know-how, which is the jungle. We now have the 5 main junglers to play, and you'll see the first one here is Viego. And that's because I coach a lot of Viego one-tricks, actually, and a lot of people who say, listen, I want to solo carry, I don't want to be dominated by the meta, I want to be adaptive to the meta, I don't mind being good at everything and expert at nothing as long as I'm weak at nothing. And I said, well, then you kind of have to go Viego because he's good at everything you need from a jungler to solo carry games. You've got resets, you got missing HP damage executes on that ultimate, by the way. You've got the healing from picking up the souls of the undead that you killed. A little creepy, but it's okay, his wife was into it. Actually, technically she wasn't, so, you know, we won't go down that road. But what he also provides is a little bit of dynamic itemization, but not so much when you're talking about Ornn and other champions being able to build anything, right? They can just be whatever you want them to be. Viego has a standardized way of building, and most Viego mains don't pick that up soon enough, and so they struggle with him. You got your Kraken Slays, you've got your Trinity Forces, hey, you've got your Blade of the Ruined King, your Wits End, your Black Cleavers, and then of course you've got another Sundered Sky variation coming out. It's always, you know, a one build this way or one build that way. There's very rarely like 10 different builds you can go that are truly viable. So whichever one is good in the meta, learn it, understand why, and leverage that for Viego domination. You're good in the early game, you're good in the mid game, you're good in the late game, and any game you're losing can be won with one good fight. Just understand how to use your E to flank. Don't always go rushing in and dying first thing. Learn how to play as an assassin, as a fighter. He's just an all-round, amazing champion to one-trick in main, and will rarely be banned enough that you won't see it. Following Viego, we're gonna go with the legendary, the one and only Kha'Zix, because everyone thinks he's weak this season. You go look at the data, oh, he's not that weak. He's always in that phase where it feels like maybe he's weak to mains. He's always in that phase where it's like, you know, AD assassins suck, but Kha'Zix is fine. And throughout history, Kha'Zix has always been fine when even the biggest AD assassins sucked. You know why? Because he has the evolved pathways. You got Q, you got W, you got E, you got R, and there's always 1 or 2 optimal ways you can go to play within the meta you have. There's always a few items you can abuse that just make you stronger than everybody else. But most importantly, Kha'Zix is one of those assassin champions that when you understand how to be an assassin, how to embody flanking, going deep into a fight, killing someone and getting out with another R prog, it's just such a rewarding way to play, and those who main this champion understand exactly when they need to full clear, when they need to invade, when they can get to evolve E, when they can dive into a team fight and get out, when they should just wait and wait and wait. And of course, if you want to go a Conqueror Ghost Agurin style to be a bit of a fighter, you can do that as well. Kha'Zix just gives a total assassin control, meta-agnostic kit to any of the players or junglers that choose to main him for an entire season, and even though he does go through periods of weakness, I understand that, he's not truly weak, he is limited by you the pilot, which everyone in this list is. Following Kha'Zix, we are going over to Lee Sin. Now, Lee Sin, typically, he also has periods of weakness, but the guy has a high skill floor, basically meaning you need to be somewhat decent at the game already to understand Lee Sin, but I have no doubt believing that a gold jungler who picks up Lee Sin can easily get to diamond with it. He's no longer this complicated, unholy, unplayable champion. Not in the world of Aphelios and Cassante, where there's 300 textbooks to read for the abilities. Lee Sin's honestly, even though with 6 abilities, really easy to understand at a baseline level. What's difficult is about weaving those together, understanding the animation cancels, E flash versus flash E, understanding how to use that Q for missing HP procs, knowing how and when to kick, insecting, ward hopping. These are not too difficult things to do once you get the hang of it. Obviously, fluid and masterful Lee Sins, those are great. And while this is a video about maining those champions, it's also a video about mastering certain champions, because to main it is to master it, and when you put in the time with Lee Sin, at a baseline level, you will be able to win games with your pressure, your farming, your game-changing ultimate, and as you get better, you'll notice that your early game becomes stronger, your mid game becomes stronger, and then you're just running over people 1v9, 20 kills a game. Whether you're building lethality, fighter, please build fighter on default, Lee Sin will provide a meta-agnostic kit. This is the champion that defines the role. He is good always, and he always will be. Next up, we have Kayn, and Kayn, again, I know people don't like hearing about the champion, but the guy honestly gives you Assassin in the Kha'Zix form, Fighter in the Viego form, with a lot of sustain, and early game is pretty solid in terms of pathing, clearing, teaching you to fuse your ganking as well as your farming, objective control, understanding a bit of patience for that orb collection. Essentially, it's a total embodiment of what junglers are required to do as a player in the game League of Legends. There are always OP, outlets in terms of your orb stacking, your items that you can build, like lethality rust at one point, the airy technology we just lost that, helps you get form quicker. There's always some exploit that you can have with the champion as well. And even though he does get banned a little bit more than some other champions on this list, it's not in such a way that you can't one-trick it. Again, I know because I coach a lot of jungling, and there's a lot of Kayns and a lot of Viegos, and they always get their champions in live coaching. And if they don't, it's a little bit funny to watch, but I would advise having a backup pick from the list as well. And now we're gonna go with the absolute beast Rengar. Now, he is just about to be nerfed, and if you watch this in the future, he's already been nerfed, so it doesn't matter. But this happens all the time. Some item comes out, makes him too strong in the game, they keep the item, they nerf him a little bit, and he's still absolutely fine. See, Rengar in 13.10, when they buffed the Ghostblade, his win rate went down. He was so good with mains and one-tricks that when they gave him the Ghostblade buff, everyone thought, oh, Rengar's free elo, but they realized, oh, this champion's actually very, very difficult to play. So while all of the other champions on this list can be played from either low elo or gold up, I do recommend emerald and above for the Rengar starting point. This is just because he does require a bit more understanding about jungle tempo and pathing, and even though you can learn him a little bit sooner, there's nothing wrong with it. If you're gold, go for it. Hey, I did it when I was silver as well in 2014, but times have changed obviously, and it's just simply about understanding pressure points with jungling, stacking your bone tooth, knowing exactly when the window is to go and get it, knowing exactly when the window is to go and invade, to use your ultimate, and obviously getting to the point in the game where you're not like 3, 6, and 0, struggling to keep up and waiting to get your itemization. You want your items, you want your bone tooth stacked before anyone else, such that you can run around and actually have fun, killing ADCs, killing Siragas, killing tanks, it doesn't matter. But people think it's an easy champion to play. You've got all of this ability in your kit, but you have to know when and how to use it. Takes time, but boy, is it rewarding. And again, despite the fact he's been a little bit meta now, you still can probably get him in most lobbies. Now let's shift on over to the mid lane, and we are obviously going to start with Katarina. That's because she's the absolute poster champion for one-tricks and mains. Her win rate massively goes up the more games you have, the more you understand matchups, the more you understand those high skill moments. Now while she isn't always the most skillful champion, there are high skill moments, knowing when to go in, understanding how to play solo queue in a messy environment. Obviously that's where she thrives, but it's also just not about that. You don't start the game fed. You just don't start the game with 20 marks. You have to get to the point where you can do all the things you see in the highlight reels. She can turn the game on its head by getting a lucky teamfight or a few lucky kills. Yeah, I understand that. But also a great Katarina will do that anyway. She's a hard to execute champion by that stretch, but it is insanely satisfying for you mid laners to understand laning in a difficult situation, roaming in a difficult situation, and getting fed regardless. Her builds often change, and that's fine because that means she's barely ever out of the meta. She's always finding a way to use some sort of AD variety. Her AP is always good though. We've had that weird tank build, don't do that, it's terrible. Basically, if she's out of the meta, quote unquote, it's probably because no one's figured out the build yet and there is someone with it. Go look it up, figure it out, learn how to play around it with those hybrid damage outputs, and essentially, she will always be useful in solo queue. Let's talk about Twisted Fate, because while he is usually untouched and not randomly buffed, Riot have just done that. So now he is going through a bit of a ban phase, but I decided to keep him on this list because he teaches you the basics of laning on mid lane and teaches you how to be better at it. He also adds the ability to learn macro and global roam pressure because of his ultimate. The versatile builds now, especially with the buffs, really insane. AD on hit, crit, AP, you've got whatever you need in terms of stun card, damage, DPS, turret shredding. It's basically very, very irritating to deal with a good Twisted Fate. And much like Kayn in the jungle will teach you a lot of fundamentals about mid lane very, very quickly. And because he has that pick card and the yellow card, anyone who steps out of position at any point, if you have other CC in your team, they're guaranteed dead. Talking about the ban rate and the meta agnostic, yeah, basically he's always good in any meta in solo queue. Yes, he goes through periods of really struggling to be at the highest level, but is that stopping any of you from one-tricking it to Challenger? From maining it to Master throughout a season? I don't think so. Get your cards up, go betting, Gambit's ready. Now when you look at mid lane, there's a lot of these obviously obnoxious champions that have high ban rates because no one wants to deal with them ever, like Zed. So we can't put Zed in this video even though he is good to main. So what do we put? We put things that are good against Zeds when they can get ahead, and good against anything when they can get ahead, and good against everything all the time. So Anivia. She's not the best at solo carrying the game through raw damage like these other champions, but she is the best at setting up everyone on her team, providing really insane walls, absolutely huge stuns, and a lot of burst damage that people don't really expect. All of a sudden you get stunned, you think, oh, I'm alive, and then you're not. She's got wave clear for those negative game states, she's got wave clear for pushing, she's got wave clear for zoning, versatile builds as well. You can go full damage and be fine if you're fed, but it's also fine to go slightly with defensive items, since if you stay alive longer, you can also set your CC up longer, and you have your passive egg. That gives you a get out of jail free card in certain moments. She's barely played, she's barely banned, has a stable win rate all year round, all through every season. She's an eternal presence on the game for 12 years or whatever it's been. It's always a good time to pick her up, because even though she's relatively easy to pick up, her difficulty to master is there. There's that skill expression we've talked about this whole video. It's not flashy, it's understated, and her skill ceiling is relatively high, despite the fact that you might want to fall asleep sometimes watching it. Yeah, I'm bringing up the assassin Zakali first, basically the OTP main tier champion. You'd think at this particular stage, with the nerfs and the way we go around hating this champion, that she'd be banned enough that you'd never see it. Yeah, she definitely does get banned more than some of the champions on this list, but we do think that maining her is a great rewarding career for you. She can side lane as a bruiser top laner if you want. Not really bruiser, but you know what I mean. She can stick to targets ridiculously easy because of the RE combo. It's essentially point and click. You can burst people down from one rotation of spells. And yes, she gets energy hungry if you're bad, and yes, that Q can miss, but it does slow and it's spammable relatively. You have the Shroud to avoid all of the evil in the world that you don't want to look at. But through the bad and weaker laning phases, that level 6 kill threat is always there no matter what. And because of the E allowing her to do some flashy dashy, and her R allowing her to go over walls, it's very, very difficult to gank her. It's very, very difficult for you to be ganked when you play her, and you almost always know that if you lose the game every single game and you're the one that cannot get fed, it's 100% on you. She has spikes in the meta, as I said, where she is banned a little bit more often, but we think you can pick her up enough that easily she can be your main champion with 80% of your games played. And again, that's kind of the metric, right? 75% plus to hardcore one trick or slash main a champion. That's what we're really looking for. As always, have a good champion pool. Pick 2 out of this list and you always have a backup. And maybe that backup could be Zed. No, I'm just kidding. Talon. Basically the Zed that isn't banned as much. Best roamer in the game because of that E parkour across the map. Bad laning phase, E to bottom lane, double kill, come back to the mid lane. Really good skirmisher, especially down the line when it comes to his R cooldown being non-existent. And obviously that means you get more kills because you're more camo, you can go in and everybody dies. He has an extremely strong early game actually because of that passive proc. Remember, the bleed damage is very important, and you've got that slow on the W. And don't forget the Q, that's basically a point and click mini dash. Essentially, you can shove better than most champions early, despite the fact that they've tried to nerf that for many years, and the roaming is just absolutely ridiculous. If you have a good laning phase, the game's almost over. You know why? Because you go into the enemy jungle, you kill the enemy jungle, you kill the enemy bot lane. You become a jungler and a mid laner at the same time. Guess what? If you're a mid laner and you fill jungle, play Talon. Same logic. Do a quadrant, gank a lane, gank another lane, invade a jungler, do another quadrant. It's really a free roaming, giga assassin playstyle, and if you're good at Talon, an easy 1v9 to high elo. Alright my brothers, let's go to the ADC, shall we? Usually ADC mains pick whatever is the best. Obviously there's not a lot of champions here compared to other roles, but there are a few outliers such as you've seen Ezreal. Now, this champion is usually pretty bad, has become kind of OP at the moment, and yet you still see him in every single game. He is good when he's meta, he's good when he's not meta. Even when he's bad, most of you are just not good enough Ezreals to execute the wins. And I simultaneously say that with the most respect and disrespect possible, because you all know at this point I main Zyra. I love her jungle, I love her support, I love her any position basically, and I love playing with a good Ezreal. A good Ezreal with me on a Zyra or any Zyra main that's good, obviously I understand there's not a lot of those, it's a free lane. There's no ways you lose because he can go aggressively, he can also go defensively. He can build whatever he wants, it can vary from patch to patch the optimizations. His builds are so versatile that essentially if you need to be tankier in history, you've been tanky. If you need to be damagier, you've been damagier. Hybrid, AP, whatever it is, Ezreal can do it. And then you think about the fact that I just said aggressive and not safe. That's right. If you get level 2 with a Zyra or any sort of lane like that, and we all in the right moment, we get kills, we burn sums, we win lane, and that's it. The thing is, people think of Ezreal as someone who's safe. He can just Q to CS, not do anything, save your arcane shift to avoid spells. That's incorrect. Play aggressively, understand how to actually play around lanes, and hopefully this channel will help you do that, and you will learn that the true power of Ezreal is not in his safety, but it is a thing you can have if you need to. Like your support roams, you need to chill in your turret, you can do that. But when you have a good support, use it, snowball, win. The champion is undeniably one of the most skill-expressive ADCs in the game. And yes, I have weird picks, so you all know I play Kai'Sa jungle as well if you've come over from my main channels. Similar to Ezreal in regards of builds, hey, build whatever the hell you want because she scales, all her evolves, all three things, AD, AP, attack speed. Traditionally, people do like the crit builds. I've always loved hybrid, still do love hybrid. We have on-hit builds now as well with the Rage Blade and the Terminus variations. She melts squishies, she melts tanks, she's a poke mage, she's an assassin, and when she starts snowballing an ISO Q, that means a Q hitting one person, really damn hurts if you build that lethality spike. Yeah, that was a thing as well. So while she doesn't really have that good early game, she spikes really quickly. So weaker early game champions, let's say like a Zeri, they struggle to come online for a long period of time. Disgusting champion, but that's not the point. Kai'Sa, on the other hand, is so dominating late, but she comes online so quickly when she gets ahead. The sooner she gets to a Q evolve, the sooner you start dying. The sooner she gets at hybrid all 3 evolve, the sooner she starts winning. Effectively, it's one of the fastest late game snowballing champions in the game, much like you would say a Rengar and a Kindred from the jungle, correct? Get a few marks, get a few bone tooth stacks, GG. That, and even though she has terrible matchups in lane, good Kai'Sas can navigate this absolutely no stress. You always know your time is coming, and I do understand that some lanes can be really difficult, but again, skill issue. Put the time in, learn Kai'Sa, learn waves, learn how to play around different kinds of supports from engage to enchanters. Trust me, it's really rewarding. And again, you guys get at least a support. When I'm playing a jungle, I just get the Grom. Basically, I get killed and my Grom gets stolen. I mean, it's miserable. Another non-traditional ADC is Jhin, and you're noticing a trend here. The stereotypical ADCs, they're all good to main. You know, it's good to main a Misfortune, it's good to main an Ashe, it's good to main a Caitlyn. But these things are what you would expect from an ADC, easy to use, better range, some mobility, some CC, these things all come together. Jhin, though, builds Swifties, right? He has a movement speed passive. He is centered around that 4th shot playstyle. He has that long-range utility with the root. He has the traps. He has the long-range engage with the ult on the slows. The champion is basically a hyper-scaling, hyper-insanely late-game damaging ADC that also provides a lot of great skirmishing power around the map as he moves. Again, really rewarding those who main him and learn the matchups and understand how to exit laning phase gracefully, how to scale properly, and obviously how to have good setup for ganks, skirmishes, and objectives, as well as team fights for his team. But if that's just too eloquent for you and, Ezreal and Kai'Sa are too low range for you, not alpha enough even though they could be, why didn't you go with Draven? He is the L9 1v9 champion. Here it is. There's nothing better than watching a Draven main melt on the enemy team. Unless you are the Draven main, ascend your mind, ascend beyond the petty rage that comes from testosterone-filled Draven gameplay, become a smart ADC, a smart laner, a smart player. And maining Draven, you will spike the best, you will spike the hardest, you will spike the richest, you will have the entire game in your control at every single moment. That's what you want, right? You're egotistical, you want that control. Guess what? Catch your axes, and the rewards for good positioning and skill, as well as understanding how to snowball properly, is free LP for life. Problem is, most Dravens get fed, get an ego, overpush somewhere, and die. Please understand regular macro. Go watch my jungle channel. I'll have videos on this channel as well. How to translate your laner lead into a free win every game. Finally, we're gonna have to put Jinx. They kind of buffed her at the end of last season, unnecessarily made her really strong. But what they did was ultimately make her modernized in such a way that her snowballing, her late game powerhouse gameplay, obscene. She is the ADC reset queen, she's the turret melter, one little snack of a dragon, one little snack of a kill, a turret. She's running around stacking that passive up, and will absolutely eviscerate you. And remember, I said stacking, so it gets stronger, right? Up to max stacks, it was initially infinite, which is kind of dumb, but now it's max stacks of 5. So if she gets a turret, she gets a kill, she gets a dragon, she gets another 2 kills, you're gonna lose your base if her team has grubs. So if you love playing Jinx, the best advice here is learn how to be quite aggressive but smart in laning phase. Don't wait for the game to come to you. Know what your power is, understand that you want to get it as soon as possible, but it's a great rewarding champion just to run around and main, honestly. There's no downside really to playing Jinx other than you will be killed by Evelyns, you will be killed by Rengars, but there's nothing you can't learn with good positioning, good rotations, sticking next to your support and your teammates, not wandering off for zero reason. Use your map control, your mid-game macro that you've learned hopefully, and apply it to Jinx, and don't get killed by needless nonsense, and you will 100% 1v9 a lot of games. Now we take a deep dive into the supports who will be covering the asses of the ADCs here. Thresh is the original one-trick champion, isn't he? Really, not a tank, not anything else other than pure support. The spirit of support is Thresh. Hook, engage, Flash Flays, Lantern for safety, R for slows, Peel extraordinaire, Engage extraordinaire, the original Soul Collector and expert warder. Don't know why, he just is. No matter if he is weak or not, he has that skill issue. He's not that easy to kind of pick up. He's really difficult to master, but he will always be good because of this. You know why? Because utility is the ultimate thing in this game. CC wins games. Hooks, plays, stacking your passive, you get stronger. You have all the supportive itemization necessary to keep your ADC alive from themselves. You're an insane roamer for your jungler. Sync up with your invades, sync up with the mid lane roams. Essentially, it rewards those who understand support at a high level. And if you're looking to climb with something, it's really the one thing that gives you the ability to be a support and have, sort of a lot of control over your game. I mentioned the Lantern, but please remember that the Lantern is supremely underrated, and people don't realize you can actually ward it to stop people clicking it, and that's just wonderful. Save a life today. Next up, we're going to talk about Bard. Now, he has been pretty broken in this patch, but I'm still not seeing a ban. He's just being picked because, not enough people know how to play him properly, and he always has such a low pick rate, a low ban rate, really low present for something so damn strong, so much solo carry potential, so much skill expression. You feel no guilt in roaming because he is the roaming champion. Leave your ADC alone, hopefully in an Ezreal, go get Meeps because you get experience. If you roam for Meeps, if you roam for invades, if you roam to mid lane or whatever in objectives, and you leave your ADC alone and you come back, you guys could be the same level. And he's been solo leveling this whole time, so what does the enemy bot lane think? He's a total game changer for your teammates, also in a bad way. If you, use your ult inappropriately, you can cost heralds, you can cost objectives, you can cost lives, but you can definitely stop the enemy herald by just, ulting the turret as it's about to charge. The engage, the control, the magical journeys of E in terms of flanking and escaping. If you basically fuse Thresh and Bard together, you'd have a total, incredible utility-based champion for everyone on your team. It'd be the most broken thing ever, so I'm sure it'll come out within the next season or two. Now, for those who don't just want utility and roams, what about a Janna? You want to keep your Kai'Sa safe, your Jinx safe? Here we go. Now, she is obviously extremely good for both engaging and disengaging teamfights with her ult, with a flash ult, with a heal, just sustaining in teamfights, honestly, using that tornado. She can play both aggressively and passively in lane, and that's pretty crucial. If you've got a Draven randomly, you want to shift your playstyle. You've got a Jinx, you probably want to play a bit more passively. You need to understand which the lane requires based upon your matchup, so that's something to learn. And she has, of course, decent roam pressure, not incredible, but decent, just because of the movement speed in her kit, and the synergy with all ADCs that she has. As I said, being able to adapt to your ADC is huge. There are obviously some weaker matchups that she might not always want, or the ADC wants, but they're all good, right? It's not like other supports have terrible, terrible matchups. And when you combine that into the ultimate no to assassins, they jump in, you press R, that's it. And if you're good with it, really, you can also shield turrets, so that's a side note, really, but if you're good with that peel against assassins, you just absolutely make their lives miserable, and in a meta where you have strong assassins in mid lane or jungle, it's a pretty damn good pick. Now, if you perhaps wanted the Blitzcrank or the Nautiluses, I understand, you want a hook champion. Go ahead, play Thresh if you want that, because those two are banned a lot, picked a lot, and they do have certain downsides in certain scenarios. If you want something that can straight up engage and change the game with easy to use kits, you go, as you see, with Rakan. Easy to pull off engages that change the nature of anything. You hit it in lane, you burn a flash. You hit it in a fight, you burn flashes or get kills. There's no in between. Amazing setup for ganks, really solid dash ability and movability so you can bait a lot of spells out. And of course, with all of this CC peel, with all of this CC engage, with knockups, he doesn't have as much shielding and healing, but that's on top of having one of the, the best engages in the game, so I think, it's a plus overall. Amazing roamer, good into any game state. Basically, you can always blind pick this guy. Much like Zillion, who not always is a blind pickable champion, but again, these are for maining. that means you can, in theory, blind pick anything on this list. And yes, that means he's good early, mid, and late because of his ult and his E alone. The synergy for engages with the speed up. You put him with a Kindred and they're so happy. You put him with a Hecarim and I guarantee you he is overwhelmed with joy at getting free damage and free engage. The utility provided with a double stun bomb, the insane slow, the ultimate revive, basically means, again, super peel, no healing and shielding, but stuns, speed, and again, I really value movement speed as a rule stat in this game. I think everybody does. People talk about, using healing and shielding. Hey, give me a Zilean ultimate and a speeder plus a slow. I love playing with a good Zilean. It's beautiful. Can be played aggressively and also passively, depending on the laning phase. And a good Zilean, much like Bjergsen, is an eternal presence no matter the meta. And because this is the only video on this channel, I recommend you go watch this one on the main channel to learn more about being a jungler. Also, please subscribe because this is basically made for free. My voice hurts.